In this video we are going to take a look at the Paragon of their Chapter Warlord trait of the Deathwatch and how to best use it in 9th edition. This topic was suggested to me by a viewer and I really liked the idea. First we will take a look at the full Warlord trait description, its questionable fluff and how to deal with it. Then we will go through all the available chapter options and how well they work for Deathwatch. Lastly, there will be an overall ranking and a quick wrap-up of what has been covered.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Temmer and I will be guiding you through this video.
So what's the Paragon of their Chapter Warlord trait all about? This Warlord trait is quite unique in the way that it lets you pick one Warlord trait from the Chapter Warlord Traits in the Space Marine Codex, listed on page 107. It excludes any supplements, so it is basically locked to one Warlord trait per Space Marine chapter listed. Regardless of any extra they get in their corresponding supplements. While this sounds pretty good, there is a fluffy catch to it. The description of this Warlord trait further states that if the Warlord has the heraldry of one of those chapters or their successors, they must select that chapter's Warlord trait. Not sure what the guys at GW have been smoking when writing that part, but it is a rather harsh restriction on modeling. So what can we do to circumvent such a restriction? First of all, it might as well be that you can come to an agreement with your opponent to overlook this. However, if you want to be on the completely safe side, here are two actual modeling recommendations. The first and more easy one would be to not paint any chapter heraldry, turning your warlord in question in a black shield who rose up the ranks, or just some space marine who served for the Deathwatch for so long that he basically no longer has any visible ties to his chapter. This can be explained away perfectly by lore, though it might also mean that you have to keep your model plainer than you might want to. A second solution would be to magnetize the pad or whole right arm of the model and swap it depending on which chapter trait you pick. This might for instance make sense on a firstborn captain with multiple loadouts and different traits to go along with that. It is a lot of extra work though. With this unnecessary fluff element of the Warlord trait out of the way, let's have a look at all the 12 options available. I will be going through them in alphabetical order. Also note that it says in the Warlord trait description that all instances of the chapter's keywords on the one you pick are replaced with the Deathwatch keyword. Therefore, you will be fully able to use it in the Deathwatch army. First, we'll be starting with the Black Templars one, Oathkeeper. It says, this warlord is eligible to perform a heroic intervention if it is within 6 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically of an enemy unit. Each time this warlord makes a heroic intervention move, it can move up to 6 inches instead of 3 inches. All other rules for heroic interventions apply. This is essentially an extended heroic intervention ability. For the Deathwatch, I would rate this one as situational at best. If heroic intervention is what you want on that specific warlord, then that's how you can get it. But I think there are far better options overall. As an alternative, you could bring a company champion, which is a strong close combat and anti-character choice, and can heroically intervene by default. He can also carry the Dominus Aegis relic. Moving on to the second one, the Blood Angel's Speed of the Primarch. It says, at the start of the fight phase, if this warlord is within engagement range of any enemy units, it can fight first in that phase. Fighting first can be powerful, especially on something like a slash captain. The problem is, however, that competition for warlord traits is fierce on such characters as it is. Between popular choices like the Imperium Sword or the Anvil of Strength, which we will get to in a moment, Speed of the Primarch will most likely lose. Just like the first one, I would rate this one as situational. For the third one, we have the Crimson Fists Refuse to Die. It says, The first time this warlord is destroyed, roll 1d6 at the end of the phase. On a 4+, return this warlord to play with d3 wounds remaining, placing them as close as possible to their previous position and not within engagement range of any enemy units. So basically we're pulling a Celestine here, but personally I don't particularly like on death abilities on potential key units, and certainly not on HQ choices to begin with. I would much rather give the character something to make use of while being alive, rather than when being killed. This one gets a poor from me only. Moving on to the Dark Angels, Brilliant Strategist. It says, in your command phase you can select one friendly Dark Angels unit within 6 inches of this warlord. Until the start of your next command phase, if the tactical doctrine is active for your army, then each time a model in that unit makes an attack, the Devastator doctrine is considered to be active for that attack instead. If the Assault doctrine is active for your army, then each time a model in that unit makes an attack, the Tactical doctrine is considered to be active for that attack instead. This one really lives up to its name. In case of the Dark Angels, this essentially puts them back by 1 doctrine, as their order, like that of any other Space Marine chapter, is fixed. Not so for the Deathwatch though, thanks to mission tactics. In order to use this warlord trait to maximum effect, you will really have to plan doctrine order and how to best combine this with stratagems such as Brotherhood of Veterans and similar that can further boost ranged units. If done properly, this one can really boost a strong ranged kill team, such as the Indomitor one. This one gets the excellent rating. Moving on to Flesh Terrors and the Merciless Butcher warlord trait. It says, each time this warlord fights, if there are 5 or more enemy models within 3 inches of it, it makes d3 additional attacks. If you are expecting a horde army that you are going to be in close combat with regularly, then perhaps this could be considered, but as with the Blood Angels one we covered previously, I think there are better warlord traits to give it to a beatstick kind of character. Situational, at best. Moving on to the only aura kind of warlord trait out of the selection, the Imperial Fists, Architect of War. It says, while a friendly Imperial Fists unit is within 6 inches of this warlord, each time a ranged attack with an armor penetration characteristics of -1 is allocated to a model in that unit, while it is receiving the benefits of cover, add an additional 1 to any armor saving throw made against that attack. While this being an aura is great, getting the actual benefit is incredibly conditional. I don't think that this is worth taking over other choices. Gets a poor rating from me only. The Iron Hand's Adept of the Omniscient is next in line. It says, at the end of your movement phase, unless this warlord is a tech marine, it can repair 1 friendly Iron Hand's vehicle model within 1 inch of it. That vehicle model regains 1 lost wound. Each model can only be repaired once per turn. If this warlord is a tech marine, then each time it uses its blessing of the Omniscient ability, the model it is repairing regains up to d3 plus 1 lost wounds instead of only d3. Basically, this is only worth it on a tech marine. Back when I covered all the HQ choices available to the Deathwatch, I rated the tech marines as situational. Same for this trait. Overall, I don't think this will see much play, as there is a lot of competition for HQ slots as well as warlord traits. For more information on my guide to picking HQs in a Deathwatch army, check out the link in the description. The next one is from the Raven Guard, Echo of the Ravenspire. It says, once per battle, at the end of your movement phase, this warlord can vanish into the gloom if they are more than 6 inches from any enemy models. When it does, remove it from the battlefield. You then set this warlock up again at the end of your next movement phase, anywhere that is more than 9 inches from any enemy models. If the battle ends and this warlord is not on the battlefield, it is destroyed, adding a bit of a sneaky touch to your characters, as is befitting of the Raven Guard. What I don't like about this one is that by going back to reserve, you essentially lose the model for the duration of a full turn for the sake of repositioning. Personally, I would prefer a mobile HQ instead, for instance, getting a jump pack if that's an option. This one gets mediocre from me. Moving on to a very popular one, the Salamander's Anvil of Strength. It says, add 2 to the strength characteristics of this warlord. This one has been making its way into various lists by now, and it's as good as it is straightforward. +2 strength can really help turning any character into more of a beatstick. This one is also popular to go dual warlord traits with, using the Witchill Unmatched stratagem. For instance, you could make a Xenophage / Captain stacking this one plus the Imperium sword. If you are putting the Dominus Aegis relic on another character, such as the company champion, you can still use the relic for mastercrafting the Xenophage blade on the captain. 6 strength 8 attacks at AP -4 and damage 2 on the charge, ignoring invul saves, is pretty brutal, as you might have guessed by now. This one gets the excellent rating. Next in line is the Space Wolf's Beast Slayer. It says, while this warlord is within engagement range of any enemy monsters or vehicle units, add 1 to its attacks characteristic. Each time this warlord makes an attack against a monster or vehicle unit, add 1 to that attack's hit roll and add 1 to that attack's wound roll. This is another fighty one aimed at larger models. While vehicles are a bit less common in the current state of the game, the monster keyword can be found on a variety of larger units, including all the Primarchs. Didn't we all suspect that the Space Wolves were up to something? With the Death Guard just having gotten a new and potent codex, this one is worth considering, gets the excellent rating. The next one is another commonly used one, the Ultramarines Adept of the Codex. It says, whilst this warlord is on the battlefield, you can roll 1d6 for each command point you spend to use a stratagem. On a 5+, that command point is refunded. You can only have 1 command point refunded per battle round by this warlord trait. If you do not really know which one to pick, this makes for a good all-rounder that will almost always be useful in some way. One thing to consider though is that this one has the greatest effect when using the majority of CP during the game. For instance, if you are spending a lot of CP pre-game, let's say on extra traits, relics or even additional attachments, and you start the game with only a handful of CP left, there is a chance that you might not see the refund happen for the majority of the turns. All in all, this one also gets the excellent rating. Then for the last one, we have the White Scar's Deadly Hunter. It says, after this warlord makes a charge move, you can select 1 enemy unit within 1 inch of this warlord and roll 1d6. On a 2+, that enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Access to mortal wounds is always great, and getting it off on a 2+ means that it is very likely to happen. I would however argue that you can get more out of the other ones, like Salamanders or Space Wolves. If you are building for mortal wounds and want to add something on top, then this would be the one. It gets a situational rating from me. After looking into all the different options, we end up with my final ranking as following. What we can take away from this is that there are a multitude of strong picks that fit well into a Deathwatch army, making the Paragon of their chapter trait a great one to bring along in pretty much any list. To wrap things up, the Paragon of their chapter Warlord trait enables access to one of the chapter Warlord traits from the Space Marine Codex. The supplements are excluded. There is a somewhat annoying fluff element attached to it, which requires you to pick the chapter that is represented on your model. There are however multiple ways to avoid this, including not displaying any heraldry or using magnets. Out of the different choices available, there are plenty that go well with a Deathwatch army. Of special note are the Dark Angel's Brilliant Strategist, which synergizes very nicely with mission tactics, the the Salamander's Anvil of Strength for +2 strength, the Space Wolf's Beast Slayer for additional attacks, hit and wound rolls against vehicles and monsters, and Primarchs, or the all-rounder Adept of the Codex from the Ultramarines, which refunds a CP on a 5+ once per battle round after using a stratagem. So that's it for the Paragon of their Chapter Warlord trait in a Deathwatch army. Have you guys been using this one before, and which ones are your favorite picks? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again, and see you next time.